Keanu Reeves was driving down Boulder Highway, the desert sun casting long shadows across the empty road. The charity event he'd just left had been a success, but the chaos of the city had left him craving some quiet. The hum of his motorcycle was the only sound as he cruised along, the wind brushing against his face. But the calm didn't last long. Up ahead, something caught his eye. A small figure was moving slowly on the side of the road. As he got closer, he realized it was a little boy, no older than 6, pedaling a tiny red bike. The boy looked out of place, his blonde hair messy, his blue t-shirt with a yellow dinosaur on it wrinkled, and his sneakers scuffed. He wasn't smiling or playing like a kid should be. Instead, he looked scared, his eyes darting around as if he was searching for someone or running from something. Keanu slowed down, his heart sinking. What was a child doing alone on this dangerous highway? Cars zoomed past, but no one seemed to notice the boy. Keanu pulled over, his instincts kicking in. He turned off his bike, the sudden silence making the scene feel even more intense. He took off his helmet and approached the boy carefully, not wanting to scare him further. "Hey, little guy," Keanu said softly, crouching down to the boy's level. "Are you okay? What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy froze, his small hands gripping the handlebars tightly. He looked at Keanu with wide, fearful eyes but didn't say a word. Keanu could see the tears welling up, though the boy was trying hard not to cry. Something was very wrong. "It's okay," Keanu said, keeping his voice calm. "You don't have to be afraid. I just want to help you. Are you lost?" The boy bit his lip, his chin trembling. Finally, he whispered, "I'm running away." Keanu's stomach dropped. Running away? From who? The boy glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting someone to appear any second. "A man. He tried to take me," he said, his voice barely audible. Keanu's heart raced. He looked around, scanning the area. The highway was quiet, with only a few cars passing by. No one seemed to be paying attention to them. He turned back to the boy. "What man? Where is he?" The boy shook his head. "I don't know. He was in a black car. He told me to get in, but I pedaled fast and got away." Keanu's mind was racing. A black car, a man trying to take a child. This wasn't just a lost kid. This was something much darker. He knelt down, keeping his voice steady. "What's your name, buddy?" "Ethan," the boy whispered. "Okay, Ethan. My name's Keanu. You're safe now, all right? I'm going to help you. Do you know where your mum or dad is?" Ethan shook his head again, tears finally spilling over. "I was just riding my bike. I didn't mean to go far, I just wanted to play." Keanu felt a lump in his throat. This little boy was terrified, and he had no idea who the man in the black car was, or if he was still nearby. He couldn't leave Ethan here alone. "Listen, Ethan," Keanu said, making a quick decision. "We're going to get out of here, okay? You can ride with me on my bike. We'll find a safe place and call your mom. Does that sound good?" Ethan hesitated, his small hands still clutching the bike. But after a moment, he nodded and let go, taking Keanu's hand. His grip was cold and sweaty, a clear sign of how scared he was. Keanu helped him onto the back of the motorcycle, making sure he was secure. As they pulled back onto the highway, Keanu kept glancing in the mirrors, his senses on high alert. The black car was still out there somewhere, and he had no idea who was behind it or what they wanted. But one thing was certain, this wasn't over yet. Keanu drove carefully, keeping an eye on the road and the small boy clinging to his back. Ethan's grip on his jacket was tight, and Keanu could feel the boy's fear in every tremble. The highway stretched ahead, the desert landscape bathed in the fading light of the evening. Keanu knew he needed to find a safe spot quickly. He couldn't risk staying on the road for too long, not with the possibility of that black car still lurking nearby. Up ahead, he spotted a gas station. It wasn't much, just a small convenience store with a couple of pumps, but it was well lit and had a few cars parked outside. Perfect. Keanu slowed down and pulled into the parking lot, stopping near the entrance. He helped Ethan off the bike, keeping a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Let's take a break here, okay?" Keanu said, trying to sound calm. "We'll call your mom and figure out what to do next." Ethan nodded silently, his eyes still wide with fear. Keanu led him inside the store, the bright lights and the smell of coffee a stark contrast to the tension outside. The cashier behind the counter glanced at them, but didn't say anything. Keanu appreciated the lack of attention. He didn't need anyone recognizing him right now. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. As the call connected, he knelt down beside Ethan. "Do you know your mom's phone number?" he asked gently. Ethan nodded and recited the number in a shaky voice. Keanu repeated it to the dispatcher, explaining the situation in a few quick sentences. "I'm with a little boy named Ethan. He was alone on Boulder Highway, and he says a man in a black car tried to take him. We're at the gas station now. Can you send someone?" The dispatcher assured him that help was on the way. Keanu hung up and looked at Ethan. "The police are coming, buddy. You're safe now." Ethan didn't say anything, but his grip on Keanu's hand tightened. Keanu could tell the boy was still scared, so he decided to distract him. "How about we get something to drink while we wait? What do you like? Juice? Water?" Ethan hesitated, then whispered, "Juice." Keanu smiled and led him to the cooler. He grabbed a small bottle of orange juice and a pack of cookies, then paid at the counter. The cashier gave him a curious look but didn't ask any questions. Keanu handed the juice and cookies to Ethan, who took them with a quiet, "Thank you." As they stepped back outside, Keanu's eyes immediately scanned the parking lot and the road beyond. Everything seemed normal. Cars passing by, people filling up their tanks. But then, something caught his attention. A black car was driving slowly down the highway, its windows tinted and its headlights cutting through the growing darkness. Keanu's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Ethan, who had also noticed the car. The boy's face went pale, and he instinctively moved closer to Keanu. "Is that the car?" Keanu asked quietly. Ethan nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "I think so." Keanu's mind raced. The police were on their way, but they weren't here yet. If that car was the one Ethan had mentioned, they couldn't just stand there and wait. He needed to keep Ethan safe. "Stay close to me," Keanu said, his voice firm but calm. He led Ethan back toward the store, keeping himself between the boy and the road. The black car slowed down as it passed the gas station, and for a moment it felt like time stood still. Keanu could feel Ethan trembling beside him, his small hand gripping Keanu's jacket. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the car sped up and disappeared into the traffic. Keanu let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, but the tension didn't leave his body. Whoever was in that car had been watching them, and that meant the danger wasn't over. The sound of sirens broke the silence, and Keanu felt a wave of relief as a police cruiser pulled into the gas station. 2 officers stepped out, a man with graying hair and a stern expression, and a woman with a kind smile. Keanu waved them over, keeping a protective hand on Ethan's shoulder. "This is Ethan," Keanu said quickly, his voice steady but urgent. "He was alone on the highway. A man in a black car tried to take him. I called it in." The female officer, Officer Carter, knelt down to Ethan's level. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm Officer Carter. Can you tell me what happened?" Ethan looked up at Keanu, who gave him an encouraging nod. The boy took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice trembling. "I was riding my bike, and then a black car stopped. The man told me to get in, but I pedaled fast and got away." Officer Carter nodded, her expression serious. "Did you see what the man looked like?" Ethan shook his head. He was wearing a hat and sunglasses. I didn't see his face. The male officer, Officer Thompson, jotted down notes. "And you," he said, turning to Keanu. "Did you see the car?" Keanu pointed toward the highway. "A black car passed by a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if it's the same one, but Ethan recognized it. He got scared when he saw it." The officers exchanged a glance. "We've had reports of a black car approaching kids in the area," Officer Carter said, "but nothing confirmed yet. We'll need to take Ethan to the station and contact his parents." Ethan's eyes widened at the mention of his parents. "My mom, she doesn't know where I am," he said, his voice small. Officer Thompson pulled out his phone. "Do you know your mom's number, buddy?" Ethan nodded and recited the number. The officer dialed, and after a few rings, a woman's voice answered. Keanu could hear the panic in her tone as she spoke to the officer. Yes, I'm on my way, she said, her voice breaking with relief. Keanu crouched down beside Ethan. See, your mom's coming. You're safe now. Ethan looked at him, his eyes filled with gratitude. Without warning, he threw his arms around Keanu in a tight hug. Keanu was surprised but hugged him back, feeling the boy's fear slowly melt away. Officer Carter smiled. I think he found a hero today. Keanu chuckled softly, ruffling Ethan's hair. He's the hero. He ran at the right time. The officers guided Ethan to the cruiser, promising to take him home safely. As they drove off, Keanu watched until the taillights disappeared into the distance. He let out a long breath, feeling the weight of the situation lift slightly. But as he turned back to his motorcycle, his mind was still racing. The black car, the man in the hat and sunglasses, it all felt too deliberate. Whoever was behind this wasn't just some random stranger. They had been watching Ethan, and that meant they might try again. Keanu's phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him out of his thoughts. He pulled it out and saw an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello? Mr. Reeves, a woman's voice said, trembling with emotion. This is Megan, Ethan's mom. I just wanted to thank you. My son told me everything. If it weren't for you, I don't even want to think about what could have happened. Keanu smiled, feeling a small sense of relief. I'm just glad he's okay, Megan. He's a brave kid. Megan took a deep breath, her voice still shaky. There's something else. I think I know who tried to take him. Keanu's blood ran cold. What do you mean? I've seen that black car before, Megan said quickly. It's been driving past our house for weeks. I thought it was just a coincidence, but now, I think it's someone from our neighborhood. Keanu's grip tightened on his phone. If Megan was right, this wasn't just a random act. It was someone who knew Ethan's routine, someone who had been planning this. Have you told the police? He asked. Not yet, Megan said. But I can describe the car. I even remember part of the license plate. Keanu's mind was racing. Call them right now. Give them every detail you can. And keep Ethan inside until this is sorted out, okay? Megan agreed and hung up. Keanu stood there for a moment, his heart pounding. He glanced toward the highway, his instincts screaming that something was still wrong. And then he saw it. A black car parked across the street, its engine idling. The windows were tinted and he couldn't see the driver, but he could feel their eyes on him. Before he could react, the car suddenly sped off, merging into traffic and disappearing into the night. Keanu's jaw tightened. Whoever was in that car wasn't done, and neither was he. Keanu stood frozen for a moment, his eyes locked on the spot where the black car had been. His instincts were screaming at him to act, but he knew he couldn't just chase after the car. He needed a plan. The police were already involved, but something told him this wasn't going to be resolved easily. Whoever was behind this was smart, calculated, and dangerous. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. The first step was to make sure Ethan and his family were safe. Keanu pulled out his phone and dialed Megan's number. She answered almost immediately, her voice tense. Megan, it's Keanu, he said quickly. Did you call the police? Yes, she replied, her voice trembling. They're sending someone to take my statement. But I'm scared, Mr. Reeves. What if that man comes back? Listen to me, Keanu said, his voice calm but firm. Stay inside with Ethan. Lock all the doors and windows. Don't let anyone in unless it's the police. I'm going to make sure they take this seriously. Megan hesitated, then whispered, Thank you. I don't know what we'd do without you. Keanu hung up and immediately called the police station. He explained the situation again, emphasizing that the suspect might be someone from Ethan's neighborhood. The officer on the other end assured him they were doing everything they could, but Keanu knew he couldn't just sit back and wait. He had to do something. He got back on his motorcycle and headed toward Ethan's neighborhood. The streets were quiet, the houses bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Keanu slowed down as he approached Megan's house, his eyes scanning the area for anything suspicious. He parked a few houses away and walked the rest of the distance, keeping to the shadows. As he got closer, he noticed a car parked down the street. It was dark, but he could just make out the shape, a black sedan. His heart raced. Was this the same car? He moved closer, staying low and out of sight. The car's engine was off, and there was no movement inside. Keanu crouched behind a bush, watching and waiting. Minutes passed and nothing happened. Just as he was about to move closer, the car's headlights suddenly flicked on, and the engine roared to life. Keanu's breath caught in his throat as the car sped off, disappearing around the corner. He stood up, frustration bubbling inside him. He was so close, but the suspect had slipped away again. Keanu pulled out his phone and called the police, giving them the description and direction the car had gone. He knew they might not catch the driver tonight, but at least they had more information. He walked back to his motorcycle, his mind racing. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next morning, Keanu woke up early, his mind still buzzing with thoughts of the previous night. He couldn't shake the feeling that the man in the black car was still out there, watching, waiting. He knew he had to do more to protect Ethan and other kids in the neighborhood. This wasn't just about one incident. It was about making sure no one else went through the same fear. He decided to visit Megan and Ethan to check on them. When he arrived at their house, Megan opened the door, her face pale but relieved to see him. Ethan was sitting on the couch, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. He looked up and gave Keanu a small smile. "How are you holding up?" Keanu asked, stepping inside. Megan sighed, running a hand through her hair. "We're okay, but I haven't slept much. The police came by last night and took my statement, but they still don't have any leads. I'm just so scared he'll come back." Keanu nodded, his expression serious. "I understand, but we're not going to let that happen. I've been thinking, we need to do more than just wait for the police. We need to make sure everyone in the neighborhood is aware and prepared." Megan looked at him, hope flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I want to organize a community meeting," Keanu said. "We'll talk to the neighbors, share what happened, and come up with a plan to keep everyone safe. If we all work together, we can make it harder for this guy to try anything again." Megan nodded slowly, her shoulders relaxing a little. "That's a good idea. I'll help however I can." Keanu smiled. "Great. Let's start by spreading the word. We'll hold the meeting tonight." Over the next few hours, Keanu and Megan went door to door, talking to neighbors and explaining the situation. People were shocked and concerned, but they were also eager to help. By the time evening rolled around, the community center was packed with families, all anxious to hear what Keanu had to say. Keanu stood at the front of the room, looking out at the crowd. He saw worried parents, curious kids, and even a few local police officers who had come to show their support. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice steady and calm. "I know this is a scary situation, but we're here to make sure it doesn't happen again. Last night, a little boy in our neighborhood was almost taken by a man in a black car. We don't know who this man is, but we do know he's dangerous, and we need to work together to stop him." The room was silent as Keanu explained what had happened and what they could do to protect themselves. He talked about safety tips for kids, like staying in groups and avoiding strangers. He encouraged parents to keep an eye out for anything suspicious and to report it immediately, and he stressed the importance of looking out for one another. As he spoke, he noticed Ethan sitting in the front row, his eyes wide with admiration. When Keanu finished, the room erupted into applause. People started asking questions, sharing their own concerns, and offering to help in any way they could. Keanu felt a sense of hope. This was what community was all about, coming together to protect each other. After the meeting, Keanu stayed behind to talk to a few families. As he was about to leave, Ethan ran up to him, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. "Mr. Reeves?" Ethan said, looking up at him with big eyes. "Thank you for helping me, and for helping everyone." Keanu crouched down to Ethan's level, smiling warmly. "You're welcome, buddy. You're a brave kid, and I'm proud of you. Just remember, If you ever feel scared or see something strange, tell an adult right away, okay? Ethan nodded, a small smile spreading across his face. I will. Keanu stood up, ruffling Ethan's hair. Good. Now go on home with your mom. We've got this. As he watched Ethan and Megan walk away, Keanu felt a sense of determination. They had taken the first step, but there was still more to do. The man in the black car was still out there, and Keanu wasn't going to stop until he was caught. Over the next few days, the neighborhood buzzed with activity. Keanu's community meeting had sparked a wave of awareness, and people were more vigilant than ever. Parents walked their kids to school in groups, neighbors kept an eye on each other's homes, and everyone reported anything suspicious to the police. Keanu stayed involved, checking in with Megan and Ethan regularly and helping organize neighborhood patrols. But despite their efforts, the black car hadn't been seen again. It was as if the driver had vanished into thin air. Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that the man was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike. He knew they couldn't let their guard down. One evening, as Keanu was leaving Megan's house after another check-in, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment before answering. Hello? Mr. Reeves? A man's voice said, low and urgent. I need to talk to you. It's about the black car. Keanu's heart skipped a beat. Who is this? I can't say over the phone, the man replied, but I know who's behind it. Meet me at the park on 5th Street in 20 minutes. Come alone. Before Keanu could respond, the call ended. He stared at his phone, his mind racing. This could be a trap, but it could also be the break they needed. He couldn't ignore it. He quickly texted Megan, letting her know he might have a lead and to stay alert. Then he got on his motorcycle and headed to the park. The streets were quiet, the sun just beginning to set. When he arrived, the park was empty except for a man sitting on a bench near the playground. Keanu approached cautiously, his senses on high alert. The man looked up as Keanu got closer. He was middle-aged, with a worn-out jacket and a nervous expression. You're Keanu Reeves, right? He asked, his voice shaky. Yeah, Keanu said, keeping his distance. Who are you? The man glanced around as if making sure no one was watching. My name's not important. What's important is that I know who's been driving that black car. It's my brother. Keanu's eyes narrowed. Your brother? The man nodded, his hands trembling. He's, not right in the head. He's been obsessed with kids lately, saying he wants to save them. I tried to stop him, but he won't listen. When I heard about what happened with that boy, I knew it was him. Keanu's jaw tightened. Where is he now? I don't know, the man said, his voice breaking. But I think he's planning something big. He's been talking about a school. I think he's going to try something there. Keanu's blood ran cold. A school? That meant dozens of kids could be in danger. You need to tell the police, he said firmly. The man shook his head, panic in his eyes. I can't, he's my brother, but I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. That's why I called you. You're the only one who can stop him. Keanu took a deep breath, his mind racing. He didn't have time to argue. Do you know which school he's targeting? The man hesitated, then whispered the name of a nearby elementary school. Keanu's heart sank. He knew that school. It was just a few blocks away. Stay here, Keanu said, pulling out his phone. I'm calling the police. You need to tell them everything you just told me. The man nodded, looking relieved, but still terrified. Keanu dialed 911, explaining the situation as quickly as he could. The dispatcher assured him they would send units to the school immediately. Keanu hung up and turned back to the man. You did the right thing, he said. Now stay here and wait for the police. They'll take care of you. Without waiting for a response, Keanu ran back to his motorcycle and sped off toward the school. His heart pounded as he thought about what could happen if they were too late. He had to get there before the man in the black car did. When he arrived, the school was quiet, the parking lot empty. Keanu parked his bike and ran to the front doors, but they were locked. He circled the building, looking for any signs of movement. Just as he was about to call the police again, he heard a noise coming from the playground. He crept around the corner, his eyes scanning the area, and then he saw it, the black car, parked near the swings. A man was standing beside it, his back to Keanu. He was wearing a hat and sunglasses just like Ethan had described. Keanu's instincts kicked in. He moved closer, staying low and quiet. The man was muttering to himself, pacing back and forth. Keanu could see something in his hand, a duffel bag. His heart raced. What was in that bag? Before he could get closer, the man suddenly turned around, his eyes locking onto Keanu's. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then the man's face twisted into a sneer. "You!" he spat, his voice cold and menacing. "You're the one who's been messing with my plans." Keanu stood his ground, his voice steady. "It's over. The police are on their way. You need to put the bag down and come quietly." The man laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think you can stop me? I'm doing this for them. They need me." Keanu took a step forward, his eyes never leaving the man's. "No one needs this. Put the bag down." The man's expression darkened and he reached into the bag. Keanu's heart stopped as he saw the glint of metal. A gun. Time seemed to slow as the man raised the weapon, pointing it directly at Keanu. But before he could pull the trigger, the sound of sirens filled the air. The man froze, his eyes darting toward the street. Keanu took advantage of the distraction, lunging forward and tackling him to the ground. The gun skidded across the pavement as they struggled, the man shouting and thrashing. Keanu pinned him down, his voice firm. "It's over. You're not hurting anyone." The man screamed in frustration, but his struggles grew weaker as the police cars pulled into the parking lot, their lights flashing. Officers rushed over, pulling the man to his feet and cuffing him. Keanu stepped back, breathing heavily as the man was led away. One of the officers approached Keanu, his expression a mix of relief and gratitude. "You did good, Mr. Reeves. You saved a lot of lives tonight." Keanu nodded, his eyes still on the man being loaded into the police car. "Just doing what I could." As the chaos settled, Keanu felt a sense of closure. The man in the black car was finally caught, and the neighborhood could breathe a little easier. But he knew this wasn't just about one man. It was about a community coming together to protect each other. He got back on his motorcycle and headed home, the weight of the past few days finally lifting. As he rode through the quiet streets, he thought about Ethan, Megan, and all the families who had stood together. They had faced something terrifying, but they had come out stronger, and for Keanu, that was what mattered most.